The inheritance will all go to my mistress, and I won't give you a single penny. The sharp sound of my husband slamming the table echoed through the room, and my body stiffened instantly. In the silence, the sound of my trembling breath could be heard. I've rewritten the will, so you'll get nothing. You don't even have the right to complain. He straightened the collar of his expensive suit and looked down at me as if I were trash. The documents on the desk, the inheritance papers, and the rewritten will spelled out my fate coldly. Suddenly, he swept the documents off the desk with his hand, scattering them across the floor. He stomped on them deliberately, crumpling the papers underfoot. Pack your things and get out. Don't ever come back. At that moment, the sound of the front door opening interrupted us. A woman with golden hair and a revealing outfit that accentuated her curves, and the sweet scent of a luxury perfume, sauntered confidently into the living room. Oh, you're still here. Hurry up and leave. There's no place for you here anymore. She walked up to me, her gaze scanning me from head to toe, her lips curled in a smug smile. Is this the kind of drab outfit a housewife wears? No wonder your husband got tired of you. My husband laughed loudly at her words and wrapped his arm around her shoulders. He didn't even glance at me, his wife of 10 years. The look he gave her was sweet, like he was gazing at his first love. The family I had spent a decade building came crashing down before my eyes. While my husband worked, I juggled day and night jobs to support the household. I sacrificed weekends for temp work, and if he came home late, I reheated his dinner to ensure it was warm. I wondered if I could have avoided this ending if I had put my husband first. But the smile he gave her mirrored the fake kindness he once showed me. How much of my life was a lie? For 10 years, I had silently endured. My husband was trying to take everything from me. But I decided it was time to end this. Quietly, I stood up, ready to release the part of me I had suppressed for so long. He doesn't know the truth I hold in my hands. My name is Amy White. I'm 37 years old, and I was supposed to be an ordinary housewife. On the day we married, I felt like I was living a dream. I vividly remember his brother Michael hesitating to congratulate us. At the time, I thought it was just sibling awkwardness. Looking back now, Michael must have known his brother's true nature. Maybe he even foresaw the hell I was walking into. About a year into our marriage, Andrew's true nature began to surface. He would flip over dinners I had made, or yell at me for voicing even the smallest opinion. At first, I thought his behavior was just stress from work. But as the days went by, his temper worsened, and his treatment of me became more severe. His mother had always told him he was special, raising him with unrealistic expectations. He had a fragile ego, with no achievements to back it up. I realized this about 3 years into our marriage when a new, merit-based CEO was appointed at his company. Andrew believed he was destined to be promoted to manager, but the position went to someone else. From that day on, his treatment of me deteriorated further. Losing his professional pride, he tried to compensate by controlling me at home. His sharp words and aggressive behavior masked deep humiliation and a need to dominate. Around that time, I started a small online jewelry shop from home. What began as a hobby grew into a thriving business. My monthly sales now exceed $10,000, and I've built a secure financial foundation. Andrew, however, dismissed it as a mere side job. He doesn't know that I've been transferring most of the income into a separate account. I wanted to be ready to leave if I ever needed to. But I hated myself for still clinging to this marriage, enduring this abuse, and hoping he might change. Occasionally, he'd become violent, and I bore the bruises in silence. I convinced myself I had no choice but to endure. Then came Claire, his mistress, who drove the final nail into my heart. Claire was the fourth mistress I knew of, each one a temporary distraction for Andrew to mask his failures. But Claire was different. Her presence felt like a direct attack on my dignity. Once, I came home unexpectedly and found her casually chatting with Andrew in our kitchen, holding a wine glass. She called him Andy, with an annoying familiarity, her perfume overpowering the room. "Oh, you're back." Andrew didn't even try to explain, instead shrugging and saying, "She just came by. It's no big deal." His smug expression that day etched itself into my memory. That night, I lay awake, reliving the humiliation over and over. Each time I tried to confront him, his dismissive attitude or anger silenced me. I felt trapped, powerless, and utterly alone. A few weeks ago, during a visit to my parents, my mother revealed something that shook me to my core. She told me that my father had been abusive during my childhood. She had endured years of violence, unable to leave because of financial dependency. Her confession stirred a cold anger within me. Was I destined to repeat her mistakes? I didn't want to live like this anymore. The first time Andrew hit me, I wanted to believe it was a one-time mistake. When he apologized with tears, I desperately clung to the hope that he was sincere. But the cycle of violence and apologies continued, each time chipping away at my trust. I resolved to fight back, quietly preparing for my escape. I played the role of the submissive wife while secretly documenting every instance of his abuse. My jewelry business became my lifeline. Late at night, I took online English lessons to expand my market internationally. Andrew, oblivious to my efforts, dismissed my work as insignificant. But that was fine. I didn't want him to know I was building my independence. One day, Claire came over again, flaunting her presence as if she belonged there. She was no longer just Andrew's mistress. She'd become an embodiment of the contempt he held for me. "You know, Amy, unlike you, I'm a real woman. It must be miserable to be you." She leaned in close to whisper the words with a cruel smirk. Normally, I would have ignored her taunts and waited for the moment to pass. But this time, I couldn't. When I glanced at Andrew standing behind her, grinning at our exchange, something inside me snapped. For the first time in years, I found my voice. "Who do you think you're calling miserable?" My words came out stronger than I expected, and Claire froze, her smirk vanishing. In retaliation, she swiped her hand across the counter, sending the dinner I had prepared crashing to the floor. The sound of breaking plates filled the kitchen, and food scattered across the floor. Andrew rushed to her side theatrically. "Are you okay?" He then turned to me, shoving me hard enough to make me stumble. As I lay on the floor, Claire laughed coldly while they both looked down on me. But as I stared back at them, I felt no pain, only a burning resolve. That night, I contacted a lawyer. It was time to prepare for more than just leaving the house. I needed legal protection against Andrew and Claire. Over the next few days, I maintained my usual facade of calmness while meticulously planning every step of my escape. My jewelry business, which Andrew still saw as a trivial hobby, continued to thrive. It had become my lifeline, my ticket to freedom. Meanwhile, Claire's taunts persisted, but they no longer fazed me. With every insult, my determination grew stronger. One evening, Andrew came home, finding me and Claire alone in the house. She lounged on the sofa, idly scrolling through her phone. Andrew sighed dramatically as he collapsed into the chair. "Andy, are you okay?" She leaned in, feigning concern, but I could see her calculation. "I've got only a month left to live." His words were so abrupt that I couldn't stop myself from looking up. "What?" Claire gasped, covering her mouth in surprise. When I looked at Andrew, I saw the faintest hint of smugness beneath his expression of false sorrow. "What are you talking about?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "You wouldn't understand." He dismissed me coldly before turning back to Claire, who now had her hands on his shoulders. "Don't worry, I'm here for you." The sight was nauseatingly theatrical. I knew it was a lie. Months ago, I had found his health checkup report. There were no signs of illness, let alone a terminal condition. I let them play out their charade, silently watching as they pretended to comfort each other. But inside, my resolve hardened. This wouldn't be the last act in their pitiful drama. A few days later, I visited Andrew's brother Michael at his law firm to finalize the next steps. Are you ready to move forward? Yes, I've made my decision. Michael nodded with understanding. The paperwork is ready. We can proceed whenever you're ready. His steady words gave me hope. Finally, I could see freedom on the horizon. The next morning, I faced Andrew and Claire in the living room. I can't do this anymore. I'm divorcing you. Andrew's expression turned blank, his mouth opening and closing as if he couldn't process my words. You can't survive on your own, Amy. How do you plan to live without Andy? Her mocking laugh echoed in the room, but I remained calm. Their petty insults couldn't reach me anymore. I took a deep breath, steadying myself against their jeers. I'm not your wife or your family anymore. You didn't even tell me about this supposed illness. You dragged me into your lies about dying, expecting me to just go along with it. My words froze them both. What kind of wife doesn't even know about her husband's health? You're more like a maid than a spouse. I ignored her, grabbed my bag, and silently left the house. I went straight to the luxury apartment I had secured months ago. Everything was ready. The furniture, the documents, the savings I had painstakingly set aside. For the first time in a decade, I felt unburdened. I no longer needed anyone's permission or validation. Over the next few days, Andrew called incessantly. He complained that the house was falling apart, that Claire couldn't manage even basic chores. Amy, what kind of woman leaves her husband with someone like Claire? His voice roared through the phone, but I felt nothing. I'm not your wife anymore, Andrew. Whatever happens to your house isn't my problem. His angry tone faltered, and then he tried a different tactic. Okay, I'll give you a quarter of the inheritance. Just come back. I couldn't help but laugh quietly. Is that so? Before I could say more, Claire's shrill voice interrupted in the background. What do you mean? You said I'd get everything. I could hear Andrew snapping at her to be quiet. Please, Amy, I'm sorry, I'll change. Just come back. His voice, once so commanding, now sounded small and pathetic. But I had no sympathy. A week later, I met them at a cafe, ready to put everything to rest. They sat opposite me, their faces tense and expectant. I pulled out a series of envelopes and laid them on the table. First, this is your health report, Andrew. I slid it across to him, watching as his face paled. You're perfectly fine. There's no terminal illness. Claire's face froze as she stared at the report. Next, I handed Claire another envelope. These are photos of you with other men. Her hands trembled as she opened it, revealing surveillance photos and hotel footage. You thought I didn't know. She was too stunned to respond. Finally, I handed Andrew the last envelope. This is about the inheritance you've been bragging about. He opened it with shaking hands, only to find proof that the money wasn't his to begin with. The 1 billion yen belongs to your brother Michael. Your father left it to him, not you. Andrew's face twisted in shock as he realized what he had lost. Claire looked at him with disbelief, her confidence shattered. You even signed away any claim to it without reading the documents. Andrew's jaw dropped, but no words came out. Claire glared at him, but didn't move, trapped in her own web of failures. I stood up, my heart lighter than it had been in years. This is the end for all of us. They didn't stop me as I walked away. Back at my new apartment, I felt free for the first time. The years of pain and betrayal were over. My jewelry business was flourishing. My life was my own, and I had nothing tying me to the past anymore. A few months later, I heard rumors about Andrew and Claire. He quit his job and drained the last of his savings. She tried to find another wealthy man, but was rejected everywhere she went. They now live in what used to be my house, fighting daily in a mess of their own making. Meanwhile, I look out at the sunset from my new home, filled with hope for the future. Mom, I finally made it out. I'll live my life now, free from pain, with only hope for what lies ahead.